Just heard that her vaulting score is 9.9. But as we said, it is a combined score that matters. So while she gets a crowd applause from her partner, Pat Kirksey, it's what he does that will now matter.
And I'll tell you, consistency is the name of the game here. If you make a little mistake, you are not going to make it into the next round.
He received a 9.50. And my quick math tells me that that's worth 19.4. So 19.4 for Mills and Kirksey, setting a pretty high standard by which the others must compete against. We'll be back with more, but first, these messages. Our coverage of the McDonald's International Mixed Pairs continues from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm Leandra Riley, along with Peter Vidmar. And 19.4, that's the combined score of Phoebe Mills and Pat Kirksey. But right now we are going to move internationally for a young lady from Hungary. Henrietta Onodi is ready to compete on the uneven parallel bars. And she's just 4 feet 6 inches tall. The first time you saw her on gymnastics in the United States was at the 1987 American Cup, where she was just 4 feet tall and 56 pounds. Now she's grown to a whopping 4'6" and 66 pounds. She is little, even by gymnastic standards.
You know, Leander, earlier we talked about how Phoebe Mills had grown so much. I mean, now she's 5'1",
right?
and that's a giant almost in women's gymnastics. So especially when you look at gymnasts like Onodi. Beautiful free hip full turn. Kick to the high bar. And a beautiful Ganger. Didn't get a lot of height, but very nice form. There's a Jaeger salto. Down to the low bar. Tip to a handstand. Now she keeps up to get ready for her last series of swings before her dismount. There's a giant. Giant full turn and double tuck. Beautiful routine.
Now she barely has to bend between the bars. But I think he pointed out something interesting about no height. She is so little that she doesn't have the strength, really, to get some rebound and some power, some explosiveness off the uneven parallel bars.
You're right. See, those bars have a certain bend, a certain give to them, and there's an optimum weight for someone swinging on uneven bars to get a good bounce, but she can barely make the bars bend at all.
This is her partner. He, too, is from Hungary, Zsolt Horvath, obviously on the pommel horse.
You wonder, why would anybody want to start on pommel horse? This is like balance beam for the girls. Not one girl in this competition is starting out on beam, and here he is on pommel horse. But he comes from a long tradition of great pommel horsemen from Hungary, and they just look at this as just any other event. He's doing very, very well. At the very beginning, he did some unique flares to a handstand across the horse.
He is 20 years old and has been on his national team for 3 years.
Nice flow work at the end, right up to a handstand. And that should score well.
Horvath is a 1988 Olympian, finishing 28th in the all-around.
And here's his last sequence. He does the flares, traveling down to the end of the horse, loops around into one more flare and takes it right up to a handstand. This is pretty much the standard dismount on pommel horse. If you don't go to a handstand, you're not doing the big tricks.
Let's go back to his partner, Henrietta Onodi.
Now here's one of her release moves. She kips through up to the high bar. Kip to a handstand, and right there, that's a very, very difficult front giant. She does a pirouette into a full twisting giant. And now here's her dismount, immediately into a double tuck. Zeroes in on the landing. Just a little hop.
And for that routine, she received a 9.825. Remember, Phoebe Mills received a 9.9 on her first vault. So she's keeping right up with Phoebe Mills on her end of things. Pat Kirksey received a 9.5 for his parallel bar routine, and that's really the score that Zsolt Horvath has to outdo in the pommel horse, because the combined total that they're trying to surpass is 19.40. However, all they really want to do is get into the second round, and it is the top 8 teams that will advance.
I'll tell you, Zsolt Horvath is not a giant, but standing next to Onodi, he sure does look like one.
5 feet 9.5 inches tall he is. Well, she is just 4 feet 6 inches. Zsolt Horvath speaks English rather fluently. He learned it in school. He is the best gymnast in Hungary right now, finishing first in the all-around at the Hungarian National Championships in 1988. So this is really kind of a changing of the guard for all the teams, not just the United States, in terms of preparation for the 1992 games in Barcelona. Again, her score, 9.825. We are waiting for his score on the pommel horse, and the judges are having a conversation about the numbers and making some final adjustments. Tense moments for these young people. Again, he is 20 years of age. She is 14 years of age. And there you see the international judging table. And when you talk about a conference among international judges, it is very, very difficult with interpreters trying to speak not only a foreign language, but to speak gymnastics and the very technical terms that are involved.
It is, in fact, many times you'll see the same interpreter traveling with the delegations because they just have to know the gymnastics lingo.
Right. We understand that his score is 9.40, giving them a total of 19.225. And currently that puts them in second place behind Phoebe Mills and Pat Kirksey. And we are going to continue on right now with what we believe may be the strongest tandem in this competition, Brandy Johnson. At the recently held McDonald's American Cup, this young lady won the gold medal. Just 15 years of age, 4 feet 11 inches tall.
Here's one of the main factors why she won. This is the vault. Certainly her best event. A beautiful round-off entry, full twisting layout Sukahara, perfect landing. She's clearly one of the finest vaulters in the world. She was 5th in Seoul at the Olympics. Had a great shot at winning a medal. There's a round-off. Back handspring onto the horse. Gets a great lift off the horse. A lot of height, good distance, and just nails that landing. She has a lot of power. She can do the regular entry round-off full twisting Sukahara vault. Just an incredible vault. Either way, she's one of the best vaulters in the world. She can do just about any vault.
I noticed her hand placement was on the vaulting board side of the horse. Is that the ideal placement, or do you want them on top of the horse more? Or does it depend really on what you're throwing?
Well, it depends on what you're throwing. It depends on the power you have. She has so much power, she can afford to hit her hands low on the horse because he gets her really high. If you don't have a lot of power, you're going to have to be more on top of the horse because you end up kind of falling off the horse as opposed to pushing off of the horse.
Again, the female gymnasts are allowed to execute 2 vaults. The 2 vaults are scored separately. Only the higher one will count.
See, there's a totally different vault, different family of vault. Handspring pike front with a half turn. Took a hop. She'll get a higher score for the first one. It really didn't matter because her first vault was fine. She gets a great score for that.
She gets a congratulatory pat from her coach, Kevin Brown. Now, she is teamed with a man named Lance Ringnald. Lance competes for Gold Cup Gymnastics. And earlier we had a chance to speak with Lance about being teamed not only with Brandy Johnson, the gold medalist, but about his strategy in determining his events.
Well, we'll start with the last event first. I think it's really important, especially in this elimination competition, to end on your best event, or a very strong event at least. And high bar is very consistent and usually one of my strongest events. And as far as starting parallel bars, even if I have a little trouble, I think I'm okay. But P-bars can be my strongest event at times. And then vaulting, we stuck in the middle because it's pretty consistent and a pretty decent score.
And he mounts right away to a planche. Very, very difficult. Takes a lot of power. There's a giant right to a handstand. Front uprise to the center of the bars into a back stitz and settles right into a handstand. There's a back toss. Takes a little step. That's going to cost him about a 10th or 2. And a Diamidov. Front uprise. And here's a stitz to a handstand. Another stitz. And here's his dismount, a double pike. Oh, big step. That's going to cost him quite a bit.
And that might open the door for Phoebe Mills and Pat Kirksey to be the top contenders, depending on how much they deduct for that major step at the end. Now, when you have a major flaw like that, do they take into account the degree of difficulty on the dismount?
They certainly do, but it's an automatic deduction. If you take 1 step, it's a 10th of a point. You take 2 steps, it's 2/10 of a point. And here's his dismount. It's a double pike. He falls back on the bars a little bit, so he over-rotates, and he's really in a deep squat. He almost landed on his rear end. That could have been even a much bigger deduction. Lance really saved it.
Again, he is paired with Brandy Johnson. We're going to take another look at her second vault.
Now, the second vault is totally different. You know, Brandy can pick and choose and do whatever she wants. Here's a handspring, pike front with a half turn, Opens up very, very well, but has almost too much rotation. Takes a big hop backwards.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have the scores for Brandy Johnson and Lance Ringnald. Stay with us here in Jacksonville, Florida.